et bienvenue à Fihili. So first off, sorry for not posting for like 2.5 months, aside from the tea and books with Light Within the Darkness, which you should go look at anyway, because it's a lot of fun and really interesting to just talk with someone who's one of your really good friends about books that you enjoy. So today we're going to do a September wrap-up and start in on an October TBR, which may or may not actually happen, but we'll see. First of all, it must be said that I've been greatly enjoying the New Orleans Public Library system since I got here, and as such I do not actually own the vast majority of the books that I read this month. Some of them I have pulled other books from the same series. 2 of them I think I pulled other books from the same series that I do actually own, but some of them you'll just have to take my word for it. I'll try to link the GoodReads pages for these books down below, but if it doesn't happen, take my word for it. That being said, let's get started. The first book I read in the month of September was Mercedes Lackey's Elite. Now, I had this copy and showed it to you when I was doing the tea and books with Light Within the Darkness because Hunter, its prequel, was our book of the month / summer. Elite is going to be our next book of the season. We're hoping to get this done before Thanksgiving break, but God only knows. Either way, Elite. This one is really just as good as Hunter. I think I liked Hunter a little more, but this is still a solid entry into this new series, and I'm really looking forward to whatever comes next, and hoping that it does come because there are still loose ends to be tied. The second book I read in September was This Savage Song, which has been on my currently reading list for over a month, but that's the point. Either way, This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This one is actually a bit of a surprise for me because it was sort of a last chance V.E. Schwab book for me. I've read 2 of her other books, The Archived and A Darker Shade of Magic. Or, well, I've read most of A Darker Shade of Magic. I really didn't like it. At all. I couldn't finish it. So, I expected This Savage Song to be sort of more of the same since I'm not a huge fan of hers, and figured this is her last shot. If I don't like this one, I'm swearing I'll V.E. Schwab forevers. And then the first couple chapters, I was like, yeah, more of the same. Great, this is going to be such fun, such a downer. I'm probably not even going to finish it. And then I got into the actual meat of the story and was like, oh, okay then. I do like this book. I like this book enough that when I needed to leave my parents' hometown, sorry, they don't want me saying it, when I left my parents' hometown and I had to leave the copy I got from the library, I very promptly went to a bookstore and bought an actual hard copy of my very own, which usually means I really enjoy the book. I did end up putting it down and keeping it down for a long while just because I was dealing with craziness involving classes, but I picked it up again and finished it within the day. So, The Savage Song, V.E. Schwab, very excellent choice. I highly recommend it. I might do a book full review on this one, but we'll see how it goes. The next book on my list is not the book I'm about to show you. This is the first of one of the ones that I got from the library, but don't actually own, but I own another one in the series. Specifically, I read Big Boned by Meg Cabot, part of her Heather Wells series. I do not own Big Boned and I had to return it to the library, so instead I give you The Bride Wore Size 12, which is another later installment in the series. Either way, they're really fun mystery series that are kind of lighthearted and frothy. Another plus for me is it's about a resident, well, not a resident advisor, it's about the residence hall monitor type. It's the assistant director of the residence hall, so it's the person in charge of the RAs. As a former RA, I can greatly sympathize with some of the conundrums that Heather, the main character, deals with. and it's just great. I really love all of these books. They're hilarious, and Big Boned was the only one I hadn't read yet, so when I found it in the library, I was like, oh my god, the Holy Grail! So, highly recommended. Bride Wear Size 12 is one of my favorites. I liked it more than I liked Big Boned, which I felt was the weakest of the series in all honesty, but regardless, still really great. You cannot go wrong with any of these. Let's see, the list is size 12 is not fat is the first one, then size 14 isn't fat either, then Big Boned, book 4 is size 12 and ready to rock, and finally ending with the Bride Ward size 12, and I'm really hoping she writes more. But that's the state as of right now. Next on the list is yet another book that I do not actually own and will not be showing you that, but I own another one in the same series. J.D. Robb, aka Nora Roberts, came out with a new book for her In Death series, which is called Apprentice in Death. And much to my astonishment, I got it without reserving it at my local library, which is astonishing. I don't actually own it, but here's a copy of Celebrity in Death, which is one of the earlier ones in the series and is actually one of my favorites. Either way, another good murder mystery. It's sort of a Law and Order SVU vibe almost, only less to do with lawyers, more focus on the detective. But yeah, you also definitely get some of the vibes of this would not work in the real world. But it's sci-fi set in the future. It's a really good series. I greatly enjoy it. And Apprentice in Death was one of the better ones in my opinion. The next book I have for you is the only one I don't have either a physical copy of it or the proxy copy of a different book from the same series. So this book was A Study in Sable by Mercedes Lackey. It's the most recent publication in her Elemental Masters series, which is one of my favorite book series. I really love a lot of the books in the series. However, this one was not one of the strongest in my opinion. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, it's just that there's been a lot better ones in the series overall. A Study in Sable is obviously playing with the Sherlock Holmes mythos, which might be why it's weaker than going with the fairy tale trends that it's traditionally gone for. It wasn't bad. It definitely wasn't bad. It also wasn't the best either. It was sort of, you could take it or leave it. If you really want to get started in that series, I would much more recommend The Gates of Sleep or, oh god, why can't I remember the title? But there's a Little Red Riding Hood retelling that I'd recommend before this, Phoenix and Ashes, which is Cinderella, or any number of the other ones. The only other one that I've really gotten such a meh vibe off of before this was the Steadfast Tin Soldier retelling and Reserved for the Cat, which was the Puss in Boots. It doesn't seem to work whenever she strays too far from certain characters, but either way, it was an interesting read. I enjoyed it. I'm still going to read the next book in the series and her next book that's coming out. So the last book that I read in September was The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. Now, this is good, hardcore, old-fashioned fantasy for middle readers. It's set in... well, at the time it was published, it was set in the modern era, but now I believe this was published in the 70s? Is this published in the 70s like I think it was published in the 70s? Oh, they got the dust jacket on wrong. Oops. This was published in 1973. Okay, so yeah, this was published in 1973, which means now it's not the modern era, but at the time it was indeed modern era when it was written. And The Dark is Rising is the second book in the Dark is Rising sequence. And it's one of the stronger ones in my opinion, but it centers on the story of a boy named Will Stanton and his coming of age at the age of 11 instead of 16 or so. And it's a really interesting read. It's fantasy for middle readers at its very finest. It's hard to get better than this one. There's a reason why it won a Shiny Newbery Award. You should read this and the other books in the cycle. That being said, it is an older book, which is good. We need to read more of those. I might do a day when I just go through a bunch of the older books and older authors that you should pick up. Moving on to the second part of this video, the October TBR. So, there are two things you need to know about books that I plan to read this month. One is they're very volatile and depend entirely on what I can get my hands on from either my bookstore, probably not, or the library. Yay! Poor grad student. That being said, the other thing to note is that I wanted to go with a kind of creepy vibe because it is October and hello, October. This is when you read all the creepy things. I read 2 books this month, which I'm not including in the TBR. I probably will include them in the wrap-up, so you'll know. The first book I plan to read this month is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. Now, granted, I've already read this book once, but I know one of my really good friends and I are probably going to end up going to see it when I go visit her next week. So it seemed like it would be a good idea to reread it while I could. So I'll probably start on this tonight. But it was a really good book the first time, definitely a bit of creepiness, so I'm looking forward to it. The second book I plan to read this month is Vasa in the Night by Sarah Porter. This is the Russian fairy tale of Vasilisa the Wise retold in a magical Brooklyn setting, which sounds really intriguing. And it's a Russian fairy tale, and I was a Russian minor, so it just sounds really, really cool. And I've been looking forward to reading it since it came out. So this will be number 2 on the list. The next 2 books I'm planning on reading are actually part of a series that I already started last month, and they are Oversea and Under Stone and Green Witch by Susan Cooper. So these 2 are more in the Dark is Rising. So these 2 are more books from the Dark is Rising cycle, and yeah, Oversea and Under Stone is actually book 1, and then Green Witch is book 3. So they bookend the one I read last month. After that, I plan to read The Diviners by Libba Bray. Again, this will be a bit of a reread since I have read this one before, but it's October and it's creepy and creepy. The serial killer thing is creepy, man, creepy. That being said, let's move on to what I'm calling the Category 2 books. These are books that I really do want to read and I hope to read by the end of the month. Or, well, I hope to read, period, but are either really intimidating or just, for whatever reason, not at the top of the list enough where I'm like, gotta read this, gotta read this, gotta read this, like some of the others in the TBR pile. And the first on that list is Queen of Shadows. Okay, this book. I'm not the hugest fan of the Sarah J. Maas The Throne of Glass cycle, although I really enjoy it, don't get me wrong. I'm just not a die-hard fan. As such, it's taken me forever to get my hands on a copy of Queen of Shadows, primarily because I didn't want to buy it. Now it's out in paperback, so I might be more willing, but when it was a $24 hardback, I was like, I do not like you enough for this. That being said, I finally have my hands on a copy. I'm moderately intimidated by the size right now, since grad student, and that would involve a lot of putting down and picking up, putting down, picking up, putting down, picking up. So I might get this read, I might not. I'm cautiously optimistic. The other book on my will I, won't I list, I guess I could call it, is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I tried to read the Grisha trilogy. I really did. I like Russian stuff, so I tried really hard. And I just couldn't get into it. I didn't like the main characters. I wanted to punch her boyfriend in the face. I kept wanting to shake her and go, "Why aren't you going with the Darkling, you fool?" Regardless, Six of Crows, I've heard, is actually really good and has the plus of if you didn't like some of the characters in the Grisha trilogy, the ones in this series, are way less infuriating. So, yeah. Six of Crows. I really hope I get to read it, and I hope I get to finish it before the end of the month. I'll let you know. So, that being said, that was my wrap-up and my TBR for next month. I hope you enjoy them with me, and that's it. Leave a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of the books I finished or any of the books I hope to finish this month. And let me know what you thought about them. That's about it. And on that note, this is me signing off.